Welcome to Weather Extra. I'm First Alert Meteorologist Jillian Johnson. Here in Central Texas, we went on a bit of a windy temperature roller coaster this past week. We started the work week off with a brief taste of early winter before some warmer spring-like temperatures return. But that winter feel at the start of the week did in fact bring us our first freeze of the season. For more on that, we bring in First Alert Chief Meteorologist Brady Taylor, who gets Weather Extra started for us this week. Brady.
Oh, Monday was a milestone day across Central Texas, our first freeze of the season, and we tied a record low. We dropped down to 29 degrees at the Waco Regional Airport for Monday morning. That tied the previous record set back in 1950 and the coldest morning low that we had since February 21st. And not anywhere really big when it comes to coldest mornings. It does tie for the 20th coldest morning that we've seen so far this year. Now, let's talk a little bit about freeze climatology, kind of what we normally see. The freeze that we saw this week was earlier than normal. Our average first freeze is on November 21st. Our average last freeze doesn't occur until March 11th. So it's later. We got a while before we get past the freezes. Now, the earliest freeze on record was October 24th on 1917. So we were well behind that. And the latest freeze we ever seen was back in 2014. And we had on April the 15th. Now, the average number of freezes, we see about 34. So kind of interesting. We talk a lot about summer heat, but we see more freezes on average than we do triple digit days. The most freezes we ever had was actually during the winter when we went all the way to April 15th. 70 freezes is the all-time record. So starting a little early, but the prospects for any more freezes anytime soon not looking all that good. But we can mark it down that we have seen our first official freeze of the season.
The same weather system that caused us to get that early taste of winter brought some in the Midwest and Northeast their first snow of the season. The system also brought 30-degree temperatures all the way down to Florida. Ian Lee was in Cedar Lake, Indiana, and has more on what conditions were like around the Great Lakes last week. Take a look.
Winter threw its first punch of the season, socking parts of the Great Lakes with over a foot of snow. Bands of heavy snow off Lake Michigan caused blizzard-like conditions in parts of Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan, shutting down schools and causing nightmare conditions for commuters.
Everyone was getting stuck in the ice. The ice is just really thick. This is really bad.
In Chicago, it was the city's first winter storm warning in more than 600 days. 3.5 inches of snow fell as the Windy City lived up to its name, with wind gusts topping 50 miles an hour, while northern Indiana got hit hard. Some areas there saw more than a foot of snow, including the town of Cedar Lake, where residents like Russell Stovall are digging out.
You weren't expecting this much snow?
Not at all, not at all. They called the kids off of school, the garbage didn't come, and then, I just started shoveling.
Is this a lot of snow for this time of year?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You got clobbered.
Yeah, definitely.
November is the 5th driest month of the year in Central Texas, and so far it's been just that. Over the past week, dry air and strong winds, along with the little rain we received, led to an increase in fire danger across the Lone Star State. For more on our area's drought monitor and rain totals so far for the year, here's First Alert meteorologist Sean Bellafury.
2025 rainfall-wise has been boom or bust for Central Texas. We are still 3 inches behind what will be our normal yearly rainfall average of 36.4 inches. February and March, we saw little rain across Central Texas, picked up the pace in April, slightly below average in May, but then of course the summer we really made most of that precipitation up. 14.8 inches of rain, making it the 4th rainiest summer on record. But of course we have been pretty dry for the past couple of weeks as well. Even though it's been dry, believe it or not, it's actually only the 48th driest autumn year to date, with 4.84 inches of rain falling. It's been worse in the not so distant past. In fact, over the last 10 years, 2025 ranks as 6th driest of all time. So that means 5 other years were drier than where we are right now. You're taking a look at the map of the percentage of normal rainfall we see. And this is for this month, of course, with no rain. It's filled in with red. But 120 days ago, notice that we still had a bit of a rainfall surplus across parts of Central Texas, and that has helped for the drought. The newest drought monitor, which was released today, shows a little bit of an expansion of abnormally dry conditions across parts of central Texas, but all in all, we are doing okay. Can't say the same, though, for the I-10 corridor, with extreme drought showing up from San Antonio to near Houston. Reporting in the studio, Sean Bellafury, KWTX News 10.
Switching gears now, Central Texas is home to numerous bat species, but most notably the Mexican free-tailed bat. And lately, you may have been able to see them. First Alert meteorologist Brendan Jackson tells us how you can spot them using your phone.
If you've had a chance to look at the radar recently on our KWTX First Alert weather app, you may have noticed something kind of odd. These plumes of weak radar returns that seem to emanate from highways and populated areas right around sunset. These plumes are actually from bats that are flying out of their colonies at dusk to hunt for moths. These are Mexican free-tailed bats, and they can fly as high as 10,000 feet in the air and can fly at speeds over 60 miles an hour to chase down their prey. Colonies of these bats are incredibly large, with hundreds of thousands or even millions of bats in each colony. This number of bats all flying out at once in all different directions is more than enough to show up on radar as they spread out from their colonies and fly to higher altitudes.
In urban areas, Mexican free-tailed bat colonies are often found in culverts or under highway overpasses, like this one here along I-35 and Loop 363 in Temple. Hence why those plumes on the radar seem to emanate directly from major highways.
Radar beams will bounce off just about anything and can offer some pretty detailed information about what it is they're bouncing off of and where it's going, hence why it's so useful in meteorology and aviation. But this also means that things we're not necessarily looking for, such as these bats, will show up on radar as well. So the next time you see one of these plumes on radar, remember, it's not a sudden rain shower, just these little guys heading out for dinner. From KWTX, I'm First Alert meteorologist Brendan Jackson.
Coming up next on Weather Xtra, we learn more about the future of space stations as the International Space Station is set to retire. We'll be back with more. Stick with us. Welcome back to Weather Extra. 25 years ago, astronauts opened the hatch to the International Space Station for the very first time. It's been in constant use ever since, but all good things must come to an end. The ISS will be retired at the end of the decade, and the race is on to replace it. Mark Strassman takes a look at what could be next.
Commander Peggy Whitson, the first one across the A-Pass hatch.
No American astronaut has logged more time on the International Space Station than Peggy Whitson. 5 visits, 695 days in space.
And now I am excited by what comes next. So this is what we call our active corridor.
We met Whitson at Axiom Space in Houston. She joined the company 4 years ago to help design a new commercial space station.
We are interested in developing a facility that's going to support research, manufacturing, and allow astronauts to get experience there.
Axiom Space Station will start out attached to the ISS, then break free and grow to 5 modules in all, enough to support 8 people. Axiom aims to launch the first module in 2 years.
This is a mock-up of the Earth Observatory.
Axiom Vice President Aaron Tullis told us the station will feature the largest windows in the solar system.
We've learned a lot about what's possible in space, but we're looking to build a platform now that can take advantage of the possible.
Axiom is one of several companies developing commercial space stations. They hope to attract customers such as NASA and space agencies from other countries. But VAST, based in Long Beach, California, could reach orbit first next year. Its space station, called Haven 1, is privately funded and the size of a bus.
This is the primary structure of Haven 1.
Max Hout is VAST's CEO.
It will support 2-week mission initially, and then we can increase that over time.
Is this to scale? VAST hired former NASA astronaut Drew Feustel to advise on Haven 1's design.
Come through the hatch, the little tunnel, then into this corridor.
Are there enough customers to go around?
I absolutely believe there's enough customers. We are at a time in history where we've never seen this much investment, interest, infrastructure being poured into space access.
VAST is counting on that interest to fund a larger space station it's planning called Haven 2.
Here comes Whitson for final hugs as she departs the space station.
For most of Peggy Whitson's time in space, the ISS was the only occupied space station in low Earth orbit. Not anymore.
月饼是必不可少。
Today, China has its own and threatens U.S. dominance in space. Mark Strassman, CBS News.
We had a special treat take place this past week. Millions of people across the nation had a chance to see the northern lights, including us right down in Central Texas. These are pictures shared with KWTX showing the incredible glow of the lights from this past Tuesday and Wednesday night. You may be wondering, how do these colors show up in the night sky? Well, for more on that, here's Sean Dahl, a forecaster from the Space Weather Prediction Center.
That is something that's a great manifestation of energy that originated from the sun, that have traveled 93 million miles to Earth and are now swarming around our outer atmosphere, getting into that level, and the interactions that happen between these particles coming from the sun, these energized particles, mainly in the form of electrons, and what happens with our outermost molecules in the atmosphere. Eventually, as those collisions settle down, light's emitted, and that's what we see as the aurora. So normally the aurora is this kind of green shimmering curtain of light. The more recent activity we've had this solar cycle, much of the world saw the aurora was that pink reddish color. And those are interactions that are happening much higher up in the atmosphere. Our eyes don't normally see that color very well because it's very dim and it's very high up in the atmosphere. But people are capturing that with their digital technology. So where we normally think people might not see the aurora, say down in Florida, down in Texas, some of them saw it that far south.
Up next on Weather Extra is this week's Degrees of Science. In our conversation this week, Brady Taylor speaks with a pediatrician about the hand, foot, and mouth disease. We have more on that right after the break. Welcome back to Weather Extra. Across the nation this fall, we've seen an uptick in the number of reported cases of hand, foot, and mouth disease. This highly contagious virus causes painful blisters in the hand, feet, and mouth areas, mainly in children. In this week's Degrees of Science, Brady Taylor had the chance to talk with a pediatrician about how this disease spreads and some helpful tips to protect your kids from this virus.
Dr. Clark, I guess up first, I know that it's hand, foot, and mouth disease. What are the symptoms that this can cause?
You know, the biggest issue with symptoms is that it causes sores, as you might imagine, in the hands, mouth, and feet. Interestingly, though, it can also be associated with fever, and it can also be associated with other parts of the body, not just the hands and feet and the mouth, but sometimes the buttocks or even the genital areas.
Is there a certain way that it spreads? Is it something we have to worry about with a lot of kids being around each other, I'm guessing?
Yeah, it's a relatively highly contagious viral illness, and it's pretty common in kids less than about 5 years old. And, you know, it's not airborne, but it's pretty contagious if they touch each other. And unfortunately, I love children, but they're dirty and they don't wash their hands well, and they sometimes are very, very close to each other, and that's how it spreads.
Is it just that contact why it's higher in kids, or is there something as we grow older we're less susceptible to it?
The reality is that once you've had it, and there are a couple of different versions you can get, you're just less susceptible because you've got immunity to it. And that's why you tend to get it less as you get older.
Is there a certain treatment for it, or is this something we just kind of got to wait for it to work its way out?
Yeah, there's not a real specific treatment. The main thing is to keep kids hydrated. That's probably the number one issue that I see, is that it creates so much of a problem in the mouth that kids don't drink well and they'll get dehydrated. And so it's symptomatic relief, right? Ibuprofen and Tylenol for the kids old enough, plenty of fluids and plenty of rest.
Is there any complications that a parent would have to worry about with this, or just make sure they're staying hydrated and kind of keeping on top of it as they go through the process?
Yeah, good question. You know, the main complication is going to be associated with the dehydration. And so, you know, dehydration can have complications for it. You know, it can lead to acute renal failure and things like that. But quite frankly, in Central Texas, we have good access to medical care. And, you know, if a kid just can't drink, we can always get them into the hospital and give them some IV fluids, and they really do quite well. So
Since there's not a real treatment to get rid of it, you're just wading through it. Is this something, if you notice your kid has some of this, just keep them at home, or should they still bring them to their doctor to get them checked out?
Yeah, that's a good question also. And I think that you know, many cases are easily handled at home. You know, we've talked about some of the more difficult parts of hand, foot, and mouth, but, you know, sometimes, especially in older kids, it can be kind of mild with just maybe some mild fever or even no fever at all. And sometimes all you notice are the spots on the hands and the feet. And so you don't really have to do anything other than just keep them home. But other times, you might actually have to, because you're concerned about the hydration status, go ahead and bring them in. Let us take a look. And my rule of thumb is if you're worried at all, or if you're thinking about bringing them in at all, go ahead and bring them in.
Yeah, get those worrying parents. So having to let it work its way through, how long does this take to work through the kids?
Yeah, typically it's 7 to 10 days. And, you know, for your school age kids, what you want to do is kind of make sure that fever is resolved and that the mouth sores have healed. And once that happens, they can go back to school.
And this is one of those things, once they get it, that kind of builds their immunity where you don't really worry about it as much, or?
That's correct. Interestingly enough, there are a few different types of viruses within the same family that can create a similar picture. And so, you know, we call it hand, foot, and mouth, but that's kind of a constellation of a few different viruses. And so you would maybe get it a couple of times as a kid, but then once you've kind of had those particular types of specific viruses, then yeah, the chances of getting it are much less.
Now, we've seen an uptick here recently. I know at least nationally some reports of that. Is it just the time of year, or is this something we're seeing more just popping up?
You know, hand, foot, and mouth and a couple of its sister issues like herpingina or gingivostomatitis, which are all kind of in the same category, they tend to be the worst in peak summer and early fall. And so temperate climates, it tends to favor the particular viruses that create outbreaks. And so, yeah, it's really just the time of year more than anything.
So you said that it's not spread through the air, it's more touching. Is there anything parents can do to try to help out with this, or is it just try to keep them away from where that could potentially be?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly want to try to avoid, you know, opportunities where other children are sick. You know, I mentioned, you know, hand washing. But then the other thing, and I think most families do this pretty well, is just wipe down areas that are commonly touched. You know, kitchen countertops, doorknobs, that kind of stuff where, you know, you have hands touching it a lot and maybe those hands aren't washed.
So as a parent just kind of looking out for something like this, is it the sores that you'll see first, or is it the fever, just where you try to catch it early so you didn't, say, have it around other kids?
Yeah, you know, in my experience, it just really kind of depends on what you're looking for. You might have a kiddo who's got some mild symptoms. You might have a kid with some mild blisters, and you might notice the fever first. Or you might have a kid that never has fever, and so you're going to notice the blisters first. And so it really just kind of depends on the case.
If you'd like to hear more about this virus and this week's Degrees of Science conversation, scan the QR code on your screen to watch on YouTube or go to KWTX.com/Degrees of Science. Straight ahead on Weather Extra is Dan Smith has the story of a cosmic mystery billions of light years from Earth that's led to an energetic discovery. This week's Moment of Science is coming up right after the break. Welcome back to Weather Extra. There's a celestial event that has astronomers both excited and puzzled. Dan Smith has a story of how a gamma ray burst across the universe is turning heads in this week's Moment of Science.
Gamma-ray bursts are a relatively new field in space science. The first was discovered in the late 1960s, and in the nearly 6 decades since, there's never been a discovery quite like this. It may not look like much, but there's certainly more than meets the eye.
Gamma-ray bursts are very brief flashes of gamma-ray radiation, and they tend to last from milliseconds to a few hundreds, thousands of seconds.
Dr. Antonio Martin Carrillo says these catastrophic, powerful events tend to happen in 2 ways. Either the collapse of a star at least 40 times the mass of our own sun, stripped of its hydrogen and helium, or when 2 extremely dense objects like neutron stars orbit each other and eventually merge. A few of our suns used up in a few seconds is tough enough to wrap your head around, but try this one on for size.
They are so powerful that we've seen them across the whole universe. So actually, recently this year, we detected one when the universe was merely 400 million years ago.
The previous longest duration burst was about 6 hours, yet Dr. Martin Carrillo and crew found this one lasting nearly a full day and wasn't just a one and done like you'd expect from other bursts.
They happened once. The event eventually, whatever formed them, died at the moment of the gamma burst. So that means you don't expect them to happen again. And again and again.
The team has some working theories why this multi-burst happened, including a tidal disruption event involving a black hole.
An object passed by, it disrupts this and destroys it, and the material gets surrounded, and eventually the black hole accretes that mass.
We've talked about black holes before, from the supermassive ones in the middle of galaxies, including our own Milky Way, to the stellar mass variety from stars collapsing in on themselves. Tidal disruption events normally happen in the former, but this burst wasn't in the center of any galaxy. This new discovery may fall somewhere in the middle with an intermediate mass black hole.
We've never seen them in action properly. We've never seen them outburst. So in that sense, it would be a first.
We have many gamma ray sources in our galaxy and here on Earth, like radioactive decay and even lightning strikes. But using the Very Large Telescope in Chile, Dr. Martin Carrillo found this one was extragalactic, coming from billions of light years away.
As always in life, it comes when you least expect. It was a boring day, in a way, in the office, looking at an image for 5 hours. I will never forget this moment where I look at the image, I find finally the source in infrared, and I see an extended source behind it that looked like a galaxy.
That distance means this would have to be an extremely powerful burst to even reach us, and that's the part that turned the group chat and space science community on its head. The next step would be to figure out if it's a collapse or merger driving this burst.
Seeing that, how peculiar or unique this is, it gives you energies to suddenly like, hey, this is worth keep doing, and there's always going to be something new coming.
For this week's Moment of Science, I'm Dan Smith.
Well, that's all we have for you on this week's episode of Weather Extra. We hope to see you again next weekend with another half hour of nothing but science and weather. Have a great week.